Greetings, Tin Boys, and welcome to Codex Compliant.
We've got a lot of work to do this month, so we thought rather than half-ass a video, we just pick a topic from the hat of simple and easy video topics.
A frank discussion about 40k's repeated use of iconography that alludes to real-world political ideologies. A numbered list.
A numbered list of what, you ask? Well, since this is a series about old Warhammer stuff, how about we take a look at 8 Warhammer 40,000 units we'd love to see return? After all, there are a lot of units that were once playable but have since been removed or replaced, and since Games Workshop has been on a kick of bringing back old stuff, pretty much everything is on the table again. And why 8? Don't think about it too much, it is just a YouTube video.
Here's the rules we applied to our choices. 1. The unit needs to belong to a faction in the existing game. 2. Any old unit not in a current codex or equivalent can be selected. And 3. It doesn't matter if their role has been filled by later units, since GW doesn't really care about unit redundancy. I mean, have you seen a Space Marine codex recently? With all that said, and in no particular order, let's take a look at 8 units we'd like to see return to 40k.
The term Ghost Warrior can be applied to a few things. It's a video game series, it's a 1984 movie about a samurai thawed out a block of ice 400 years later and getting into trouble in the modern day, and, more pertinently, as a generic name for the various Eldar Wraith units. These come in a few sizes these days, but have you ever wanted one that's a little bit smaller? Well, in the late 80s, before Wraithlords were called Wraithlords, a Ghost Warrior was a specific type of smaller walker, also seen under the name of Battle Drones and given rules in White Dwarf 101. Now, you could say that these were an early version of Wraithguard, and you're probably right, but their actual use in game was much different to Wraithguard or even Wraithblades for that matter. These were stealth units used for infiltration, sabotage, and assassinations, and were made of a plastic called Stealthine that made them invisible to most sensors. In universe, that is. The actual models were made of metal that was presumably very unstealthy.
They had 3 weapon mounts, 1 on each hand and 1 on the head, onto which any 3 basic and or close combat weapons can be mounted. The models they made showed them with a couple of melee weapons on the hands and a ranged weapon on the head, but there's nothing to stop you from mounting 3 guns on it or even 3 melee weapons. You know, put a power fist on its head so it can punch and headbutt at the same time. For each of these units, we're going to give a brief suggestion as to how we would bring them back. So, in the Ghost Warrior's case, they could be smaller and less tough than a Wraithguard, but since the examples of the old versions were all equipped with Cameo line. I don't know how you're supposed to say that word. Anyway, it would make sense if they were able to do the same kind of stuff as Rangers. You know, mess with your ability to hit them and allow them to infiltrate at the start of the game. Just unlike Rangers, they'd be meant to get up in your face nice and early. Probably need to be renamed to something like Wraith Sprites or something. I don't know, I'm not good with names.
Exodite! Dragon Knights! Were space elves riding dinosaurs. I don't really feel like there's anything else we need to say to state the case that they should be back in the game other than what I just said, honestly. Okay, fine, we'll talk about them just a little bit. Belonging to Eldar, who settled on far-flung and untamed worlds, the laser lance-wielding Exodite Dragon Knights ride their fearsome steeds, that look remarkably like the dinosaurs of old Earth for some reason, into battle against their foes. Again, there's not much to these, other than they're just a really cool concept. They were last seen in a codex in 2nd edition. Now, technically, since they don't belong to the craft world Eldar, to bring them back as a mainline unit might require some light massaging of lore, depending on how they wanted to do it. But that tends to happen whenever they bring back an old unit anyway, so it's fine. It's fine. In-game, they could work very similar to Imperial Guard Rough Riders. Wait, what? Rough Riders got relegated to Legends? What? When did that happen?
Okay, I guess this slot is Rough Riders. If you're new to the game, Rough Riders were the Imperial Guard's horse-borne cavalry, which although might seem a little silly considering they have sci-fi walkers and tanks, is also very Warhammer 40,000. They've been in Astra Militarum codices since codices have been a thing, and of course they were Imperial Guard codices back then anyway. And hell, they predate those as well, since they showed up in Rogue Trader. However, they were cruelly snatched away from us in 8th edition and placed in Legends. So yes, they are still technically playable, and there is a version specifically for Krieg players in the Imperial Armor Compendium, but that's not the same thing as being a mainline Codex unit, and you damn well know it. But hey, if war bosses in Mega Armor can bust their way out of Legends and back into a Codex, then there's hope. If they were to return, it'd be nice if they came in a more generic form than the Attilan models that they've had for, well, most of their existence. Not just because it means there's less risk of a dicey caricature of a real-world culture, but also since from their inception there's supposed to be a lot of different Rough Rider regiments, and a more generic kit could be more easily modified to fit in with whatever regiment you're using. And whilst I'm just wildly wishlisting, I'd also like a plastic Warhound Titan kit and for my rent to be halved. How would they play in-game? I don't care. This is purely a nostalgia thing. They were there when I started playing. How dare they change anything without consulting me?
Squeak catapults were catapults that fired pots of angry buzzer squigs across the battlefield, and were last seen in a codex in 2nd edition. Don't really have much else to say about this one, it just feels like the sort of thing that would feel right at home with the new Beast Snaggers stuff. It's already got the lower tech approach and uses squigs. They could even make it a new mech gun variant, so half the work would be done for them. You could make the weapon do something funky based on the old fluff. Like it can be fired at units in close combat, as the buzzer squigs don't attack orcs since they simply do not like the taste.
I think we can all agree that jet bikes are very cool. In 40k, they're really only used by the Eldars and the Custodes, with one notable exception, but back in the day the Imperium had much more access to them, and by back in the day I mean both canonically and in a real-world game way. This is why there's some very phallic Space Marine jet bikes seen zipping around the tables of those playing the Horus Heresy game, and why there are Rogue Trader models for 40k era Imperial jet bikes, meaning there was a time when the Imperial Guard had access to both horses and jet bikes at the same time. These jet bikes disappeared over time as the modern day Imperium isn't supposed to be as flush with anti-grav tech as it once was.
Now, we wouldn't advocate for the return of the Imperial Guard jet bikes because those don't really feel like they fit that faction's vibe anymore, but the Space Marine ones absolutely do. And with the Primaris unit's arrival in 8th, and with it gradually a host of new anti-grav tanks, it feels like it might be time for a new Primaris Space Marine jet bike to appear. To distinguish them from Outriders, they could be made into a fast heavy weapon platform like their Heresy era equivalents. But maybe slap some stubbers on there too, since add a heavy stubber seems to be part of GW's design philosophy regarding hovering Primaris vehicles. The penile shape of the Heresy era bikes is optional. Although, frankly, as much as we'd like the idea, it's probably fine if Space Marines don't get any more units for a little while. I think after 8th and 9th edition they've had enough for the moment.
Sometimes you want a unit returned to the game because they fill a niche not currently filled. Sometimes it's pure nostalgia, and other times it's because they're so charmingly silly that you just can't help but love them. Imperial Guard Beastmen are one of the latter. Beastmen are one of the many things that were pulled across into 40k from fantasy when it was originally written. Nowadays they're still around as Zangors, as Chaos Troops in Blackstone Fortress, and as a hired gun in Necromunda. But their original models were for the Imperial Army, with a handful produced during the Rogue Trader era. Canonically, they were looked down upon by the rest of the army since they were abhumans and bigotry is part of the background radiation of the Imperium, but they were considered useful for, quote, suicidal assaults. Stay classy there, Imperium of Man. Don't really need to say how these ones would work since there's already 40k rules for Beastmen due to the ones that were in Blackstone Fortress. You just need to Imperiumify them a bit and maybe make it so they can be in squads greater than 4, since that requirement in the Chaos one seems, like it would be a little restrictive.
Okay, we know that when he gets discussed on the internet, he can be a bit of a meme, but we legitimately would love to see Doomrider return. Sorry, I mispronounced that. It should be, Doomrider! This Slaanesh speed demon, note spelling, was only present for one codex, the first 3rd edition Codex Chaos Space Marines to be exact. And his twin meltagun-armed bike had the unearthly ability to leap over obstacles, so it counted as a jetpack. which is also very funny. Also, being a demon now, he had to be summoned on the battlefield, but he also had the rule, he comes, he goes. Which means that at the end of each turn you roll a d6, and on a 1 he just vanishes back into the warp. And personally, I think that's a kind of chaotic gameplay energy that Chaos needs a lot more of. Since Chaos Marines can still summon things, I don't think you'd really need to do much to his rules and stats beyond increasing them alongside with the power creep. Mostly, we just love to see what they do with his model. I mean, if there's one 40k unit that needs a Nagash-style, over-the-top metal-as-hell model overhaul, it's Doomrider. If it doesn't look like the Bat Out of Hell cover, they have failed.
And finally, did you know orc robots used to be a thing? There were a few different types mentioned in 1st edition's orc sourcebook. Here we go. The first were tin boys, small robots designed in the mocking image of their foes, and you do not want to know what kind of foul and depraved things I do to get hold of one of the marine ones for a decent price. Next were captured imperial robots, complete with orcish misspellings, and lastly, well, we'll get to those in a second. Like other Rogue Trader era robots, they didn't work the same as a regular unit. These had to be remote controlled from a nearby mech who would give them 3 commands for them to perform in the next turn. So, like you would say, activate, move, and fire at the nearest target that wasn't green. Seriously, that last one was a specific command. Anyway, the unit we'd like to see returned is the last orc robot in the book, the Runtbot. Runtbots look like tiny gargants and were controlled by runt herds rather than mechs, as they were designed to accompany grots into battle. And just to prove my commitment to wanting them back in the game, I built myself one a while ago since the original models can be a smidge pricey. As you might be able to tell from my version, which I run as a mega armoured custom force field mech, a Runtbot's job was to provide a force field to protect the grots around it, who think of the big whirring robot as a friend and protector, which is adorable. Also, they did make a limited run Runtbot model for 2010's Games Day, but it had quite a different vibe, although this is another model that I would do horrifying things to acquire. I think it'd be really easy to implement Runtbots into the current game as an alternative to a runt herd. Just give them an underpowered custom force field, say one that still gives a 6+ invulnerable save but only works on a single keyword Gretchen unit, and you're halfway there. And I mean, even if they don't put them back in the game, I'm probably still going to make more of them out of old paint pots anyway. So that's it, 8 units we'd like to see return to the game, but that was just our opinion, and, you know, it wasn't a complete list either, so feel free to let us know in the comments what units you'd like to see return.
And if you're watching this in the future, some of these might have actually come true. It's probably going to be the Space Marine jet bike though, because, I mean, Games Workshop do really like their Space Marines. So,
Hello, thank you for watching this video right to the end. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving us a like or subscribing. If you'd like to support what we do and join the names going past right now, then maybe throw us $1 or $2 over at patreon.com/snipeandwib. We also have merch now, so if you'd like a t-shirt with a reference on it that not even most of the people watching this will understand, well, there's a link in the description. Also, I got sick in between recording the rest of my voiceover and this bit right now, so you totally should do all those things I just said, because that will make me feel better, I guess? Do what you want. I'm tired. Thank you for watching, goodbye.